I'll record.
Shall I record?
No, it's started. Okay, let's start again. Good morning, everyone. What I would like to tell you about is Sofie Enterprises' credo, which is be bold, be enterprising, and be connected. And I'd just like to wish a very warm welcome from me, Nikki Holt, co-founder and managing director of Sofie Enterprises. Sofie stands for the Society of Free and Independent Enterprise, and it was created in a COVID-stricken world to create a community of entrepreneurs, business owner managers, and social entrepreneurs through events, webinars, and workshops. And these are all designed to foster learning and business skills and business development in this time of crisis and going forward. We believe that better integrated communities really do make a better world. I would just like to add, with your permission, I'm hoping that having really enjoyed this webinar, you will all agree that James Hunt, my co-founder and CEO of Sofie Enterprises, give us a wave, James? Yes, thank you. That he and I may contact you over the next few weeks just to discuss Sofie. You may have already had the chance to read our website and learn about the different types of membership that are available. We would love you to come and join Sofie community and be part of a change in the world. So I hope that's all right with everyone. So thank you very much. And off we go. So first of all, it's hard to believe that this is now week 12 of lockdown, and we're all increasingly aware of the long-term damage being wrought in our businesses. We all know that it's the small businesses and entrepreneurs who are the backbone of our productive economy. So now is the time to make brave moves and challenge our preconceived ideas of how our businesses cope in a recession. And you can see on the screen just a brief run through of how our agenda will go today. So we will be going into breakout rooms after the panelists have given us their golden nuggets advice, and then you will have the opportunity to bring your burning issue back to the floor. So the subject of our Sofie webinar today is driving growth and taking your team with you. And as we put on our website, do you have a grip on your business, or does it have a grip on you? Well, hopefully our panel of experts are going to explain how to conceive and execute a plan that will work for you and your team. They really understand what is needed to drive growth. Your businesses are going to be such a crucial part of taking this country forwards. And today we plan to give you some clear, quick takeaways on how to grow your business whilst bringing your team along with you. Our expert panel will help you clarify the key areas to focus on in order to achieve that important growth. So, as I said, the agenda will be as follows. I'm now going to introduce you to our wonderful expert panel. Could I have a wave from each of you, please? It's Dave Morris from Zentano, Robert Burns from Beaufort Financial, and Ian Woollard from the Academy Partnership. So, in order of speaking, we have Dave Morris, who is the founder and MD of Zentano Limited. Dave is a professional coach and facilitator of change in owner-managed businesses. Dave understands the challenges of changing you and your team's mindset, which is often the biggest barrier to managing change and achieving growth. He's going to share insights on how you can create a journey map for you as leader and your team using a tried and tested practical toolkit. Our next speaker will be Robert Burns, who is a chartered financial planner from Beaufort Financial. Robert helps business owners solve their current financial worries and concerns. His background as an auditor and finance director, together with his commercial and financial experience, means he has a deep understanding of business finance. This equips him to help business owners with solutions to provide financial peace of mind and to achieve and maintain their desired lifestyle. And finally, we have Ian Woollard, who is a chartered accountant who helps business owners create performance-driven financial projections and the reporting systems to manage and measure financial performance. he understands that a business is all about culture, leadership, and team performance. So Ian helps owners both strategically as they work to an exit and on their day-to-day accounting and tax affairs. So Dave, may I invite you to start us off with your 2 golden nuggets, please?
Yes, thank you, Nikki, and good morning to everybody. So my first golden nugget is all about good habits, because what I seem to have learnt over the years is that a lot of owners in businesses and senior people in businesses have got a vision that tends to be in their head, and it makes a lot of sense in their head, but they struggle to get their team engaged with it. So vital to making that happen is focus, discipline and accountability, and those 3 things are often somewhat lacking in businesses that are trying to grow. So I read a book a couple of years ago that a client of mine asked me to read, actually, about growing a business, and there was a great quote in there that vision without traction is just hallucination. Vision without traction is just hallucination. And what they mean by that is that lack of discipline, the lack of good habits in place, and also the fear that comes along with growth. And I'll talk about that in my second nugget. Don't get dealt with very well. So James, if you also want to click to show the model. So I came across this model, the EOS model, the entrepreneurial operating system, which the client introduced to me because they were introducing it in their business. They wanted some help embedding it. I've since embedded it in our business, and I'm helping a lot of other businesses do the same. It's got 6 very simple components, okay? It provides a structure and a toolkit for you to structure your growth. It's very easy to understand. It's very easy to explain to other people. Obviously, like any growth, it's not easy to implement. That requires effort and it requires discipline. And you can see the 6 components there. So having a strong vision component, a people component, a data component, a process component, a component that deals with issues, and then a traction component that brings it all together. And you can see in there some of the parts of those components as well, which if you want me to expand on later, I can. I've only got 3 minutes now. So that's the structure. Structure your growth, make sure you work through the 6 components. And there's a book that supports this, which I know I recommended to James. You probably can't see it on my camera, Traction. It's a really good book to read, Traction by Gino Wickman. Thank you. James, if you want to click forward. My second nugget is about fears. So a lot of change is underpinned by fears, and fears drive stories. Those fears tend to sit into 4 categories. So the first one, James, if you click, is around self. It's about self-worth. And it means that we ask sort of questions like, am I good enough? Am I competent enough to do this? And a lot of business owners will ask that privately to themselves. They won't admit it to anybody else, but they have that kind of self-doubt sometimes. Can I actually take this to the next level? I've never been to the next level. Okay, that's the first one. The second one, James, if you click again, it's still in relation to self, is about failure. So the sorts of questions we ask there to ourselves are, what if I fail? Will I get the blame if it all goes wrong? Can I take responsibility for this stuff? And that it happens to the owners, and it also happens to all the people in the teams as well. The third fear, which drives narratives, is about the environment. So James, if you click again, the next one's about security. So the sorts of questions you're asking there is, well, what will I lose by doing this? What is happening while I'm doing this? So it's about, every human being likes to feel secure in their environment. And the fourth one, James, if you click again, is around control. So questions like, what if I lose control? How will I manage? I think that one of the biggest things in terms of growth that I see is around the control thing. In the business owners and senior people just can't let go of stuff. They don't sufficiently delegate stuff. And you cannot grow a business if you just hold on to everything. You have to let go of something. So these 4 fears which drive these stories actually have to be managed. So the thing about this, communication is absolutely vital. You have to communicate effectively. You have to manage the change, and you have to manage these fears because they will be there. And don't underestimate how fear can derail change if you don't manage it, because it will do so. And that's my 2 golden nuggets. So the important thing with all of this is to know your end game. And I know now Robert's going to talk to you a little bit more about your end game. Thank you.
Hello, Robert. Are you on mute?
Good morning, and thank you, Dave. My first golden nugget of advice is to consider the question, what is your end game? Whilst we are all unquestionably in challenging and unprecedented times, the long-term principles of business and financial planning remain the same. The first step is to be clear where you and your business are now in the context of where you want to be in the future. What is your long-term goal, i.e., what is your end game? Now, to do this, consider from a personal point of view questions such as, why did you originally set up your business? Is it more than for the money? After all, money is nothing more than a tool. It's like the sail on a boat that we skillfully manage to navigate towards our destination. So therefore, make sure you can understand the connection between tangible things like money and intangible things like doing something you enjoy. For example, I want to grow my business over the next 5 years so I can retire early because my parents died in their late 60s and I want to travel the world. Or I want to free some capital up for my children to buy a house. Now, moving on to my second golden nugget, James, is be curious. To help address your end game, be curious. It will help you work out where you want to go to and how to get there. Now, there are many definitions of curious, but I particularly like it's an interest in learning about people and things around you. Be inquisitive and something that is unusual and strange and therefore worth noticing. By being curious, it will help you understand the possibilities of where you can go in life. It will help you have an adaptive and positive mindset. But remember, you only have one go at life. So be curious for yourself, be curious for your family, be curious for your business, your competitors, and most importantly, be curious for life. The two do go hand in hand. By understanding your end game, it will help you be curious and help your business to flourish. By being curious, you will discover opportunities for you and your business to help you reach your end game. Be open to opportunities that flow from your curiosity. It will give you the heart and mind to succeed. And with an open and curious mind, you can embrace your vision or your end game. I will now pass on over to you, Ian. Be curious about the numbers.
Yes, thank you very much, Robert, and good morning, everyone. My job as a chartered accountant is to help you be curious about the numbers in your business. And the only numbers that really matter are your cash numbers. Certainly not your turnover and probably not your profits. Those profits can be misleading. Cash generation is everything. You need to know where the cash is coming from. What parts of your business are generating the most cash and why? What story are those numbers telling you? It's very easy to be a busy fool. It's also very easy for owner-managers to work harder and harder and not price in a true cost for their labour. When you do, you make it in for a nasty surprise. Your business in true accounting terms may be loss-making because no one would employ you for work for less money. It's very easy as well to be unrealistic about accounting policies. For a very good reason, banks, when assessing a business for lending purpose, look at something called EBITDA. This is a way of measuring cash generation. It allows them to apply consistent testing, so they do not need to worry too much about those accounting policies. So if you could put up my slide then, please, James. So what we've got here is a beautiful looking peacock, but pluck that sucker and he looks like a chicken. And that's sometimes the way, often the way I view accounts. So here are my golden nuggets. Beware of believing in your own BS. There is a Roman maxim in law that says, let he who would be deceived, be deceived. Don't deceive yourself. And make sure you're telling a believable story to yourself and the world. Simon Sinek says it beautifully. Why do you do what you do and why should anyone care? Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, panelists. There's lots of food for thought there and some really fabulous advice. Now, as promised, we're going to put you all into breakout rooms, and this is your opportunity to discuss amongst yourselves what you feel are the crucial questions that Dave, Robert and Ian have raised. So we'll shortly send you out into breakout rooms. There will be a room host to facilitate that process. So your room hosts today are Dominic Marlowe. Can you give us a wave, Dominic? Carl Tomlinson, Rod Willis, James Hunt, Gordon Philp, and Penny Parkin Mason. So just a reminder, your breakout room is the opportunity to discuss the points that the panel have raised, come up and bring back to the room your one burning issue or question, and choose a spokesperson to put that to the panel. So your room hosts are there to help you. We will pause recording now. And then, Alison, are you ready to send everybody into the breakout room?
Yeah.
First of all, James, who's your spokesperson?
We have the very articulate Carl Kruger.
Carl Kruger, lovely. And Penny, who's yours?
So Alistair is going to be our spokesperson for the room.
Who is, sorry, Alistair? Alison, sorry, you're cracking out.
Alistair.
Alistair, lovely. And who else have we got? We've got Carl, who's your spokesperson?
It will be Viba Actor.
Lovely. And Rod, who's your spokesperson?
I was in with James, so James has covered that.
James.
No, James has covered it. We were in the same room.
Oh, right, okay. Gordon, who was your spokesperson?
Spokesperson will be Paul.
Paul. And finally, Dominic.
Yes, hello. Our spokesperson is the equally extremely articulate John Pansack.
John Pansack, lovely. So if I could now ask each of the spokespeople to pose us their questions. So let's start with Carl Kruger.
Okay, thank you. We were considering how, using the model and the concepts, how do you determine whether your people are truly aligned with the vision and therefore enabling the traction to take place? And this, of course, is especially relevant now that many of them are working from home.
That's a very good point. And I think that's definitely one for Dave. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Actually, it does make it a little bit more difficult now. Everybody is working from home. So the first part of your question is if you look at the traction model. So one of the things I asked you to do is have a very clear long-term goal, big, hairy, audacious long-term goal, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, or even further down the line. And you've got to flesh that out and be really clear about it. In terms of the people side of it, that the importance there is do you have a set of company values? And I take it a stage further than what the book says. I said not only do you have a set of company values, but have you articulated those into a set of everyday behaviours, individual behaviours that everybody understands, and don't just understand, they actually live them, they actually demonstrate them, and that obviously has got to start at the very top and be all the way through. So in terms of getting the right people for your business, using that model, are people that share your values and demonstrate your values. And if they don't, they do not fit, and eventually they will have to go, either by choice or you'll have to get rid of them. In terms of where you're going, they have a concept of, do they get it? Do they want it? Have they got the capability to deliver it? Now, capability is something you can develop. So if somebody's short on knowledge or skills, obviously you can upskill them. But if they don't get what you're about and don't want to be part of what you're about, again, why are they in your business? So you have to make some pretty tough choices about people on this. So the interesting thing in terms of the businesses I've been helping embed it, I can think of a couple of businesses that have actually realised they've had some people that are actually no longer fit for purpose because they just don't want to be on the journey. And they've had some pretty adult conversations about though, but some people have left the business because they just didn't want to be part of that journey going forward.
And what about dealing with the issue with people working from home? Does that have an impact, or are you saying that those behavioural values, if they're embedded properly, won't make a difference?
Well, it's interesting because I think you can communicate very well with things like Zoom now. I mean, obviously you have to think about it in a slightly different way. So using the traction model, when you've actually fleshed out some of the journey you want to go on as a leadership team or as a senior person, they then ask you to communicate that to whole of your company. Now, that's normally in a face-to-face meeting, but if you can't do that at the moment. So the business I'm working with now, we're sort of getting to the point where I'll be able to do that. Well, I've said to them, what are you going to do if you can't get back face-to-face with all your people? Because they know that's not going to happen for a while. So I think we just need to find a way to do it using the technology, and you can do it effectively. I was wondering for myself how I was going to run a business and coach people, because we've done most of ours face-to-face traditionally. Actually, running workshops on Zoom has been really effective. In fact, in some ways, more effective because you can time block time. So I think you just got to just work out how to do it a different way, and just be clear with your messaging. Give people a voice. So the breakout rooms are great for people to have discussions about things, and just make sure they can air their concerns and their views, because you want to understand their fears. Go back to my second point. You need to understand what's going to get in the way, and that's usually stuff that's up here. Does that answer your question, Carl?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and covered a fair number of the issues we'd raised internally as well. So thank you for that.
That's good. Fantastic. Okay, and now on to Alistair, please.
Sure. Well, first off, I think we thought all three presentations were very good, very thought-provoking. We spent most of our time, talking about the effects of uncertainty, and we sort of concluded that how do businesses know really when they've kind of, whether they're in survival mode or whether they're in growth mode. And I guess our question boiled down to a challenge to each of the three presenters, really, how their golden nuggets could be applied to help leaders make that decision. Okay. Yes. Very interesting point. So, Ian, would you like to answer?
Okay. so what do I do about uncertainty? Is that what the question?
Well, yeah. What you're going to tell me to do about uncertainty? Yeah.
It does all come to, well. It does for me. The only thing, I think like an accountant. I think in numbers. So I get everything down on paper and kind of try and predict as much as I possibly can that's going to happen, and just try and take action. One of our clients was amazing. They're an event company, and they just put their company into dormant status. They said to all their suppliers, we can't do anything. We don't want to be paying you down the line. We don't want to just be in arrears when we come back. We just want you to get rid of all of the money that we're going to owe you, and we'll be back in 6 months' time. And if we're not, then we'll wind it all up and go our separate ways. And I just thought that was a brilliant reaction to the uncertainty. They took the bull by the horns and told everyone what to do, and everyone just went, okay, fine. That, if that helps, that's the most impacted example I can give you from one of our clients.
Does that help, Alistair?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Robert, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, because you're talking about uncertainty, and I think a lot of it is about what can you control and what can't you control. There's so much at the moment we can't control, but there's a lot that we can control. And some of it, I think a lot of people can use the uncertainty to think about what they want to try and do longer term and their long-term aims and objectives, because they may have changed, they may have not changed, but the general principles are still remain the same. Perhaps if it's to do with money, why do you want money? What do you need it for? Why do you want a business that's worth £500,000 or £1 million? What is it? What's it all about long term? And you can't control what's going to happen with the lockdown, whether we're going to be back in business next month, 2 months, 3 months time. We just can't control that, but we can control our long-term objectives. And if you remember, one of the things I said is that make sure you understand the connection between tangible things like money and intangible things like doing something you enjoy. So you've got to get the right balance in life.
Okay, and finally, Dave, this uncertainty issue.
Yeah, so picking up on what Robert was saying, there's going to be a load of stuff that we don't know, and that's always going to be the case. Economic uncertainty is not a new thing that started in March. It's been going on for quite some time, and it's just exasperated by what's going on at the moment. But when we talk about to leaders and businesses about being the best leader you can be, our thing is called connected leadership, and what underpins that is an adaptive mindset. So you need leaders who can adapt and flex their mindset. So take example, what happened to us when we went into lockdown in March is I lost pretty much all my work overnight because most of it was booked face to face. My co-owner Rich lost most of his. So we thought, okay, what do we do? Do we panic, or do we trying to go straight away into recovery mode for the business? And this would be music to Ian's ears. So the first thing we did was got our cash flow forecast out and said, what do we know in terms of cash? Yeah, that told us a story that said you're not going to go bust this year. Right, good, okay. Don't panic then. So what do we need to do? So it was just allowing ourselves, to not allow these fears that would very easily take over inside here to take over and drive stories and narratives that wouldn't be helpful, but to just take a step back, get that mindset working in the right direction, say, okay, what do we know? What can we do? And you have to just go step by step, because there's even now a load of stuff we just don't know. We really don't know. So that flexible, adaptive mindset is key to this, I think. And it's got to start with the leadership.
Does that help, Alistair?
Yes, certainly. I think instinctively you've got to start with what you know, and that sounds like 3 endorsements. So
yeah,
very good.
Absolutely. So now can we have V, your question from your room?
So hi, Nikki. Yeah, we had an interesting discussion around sort of the art of delegation and the extent to which we share information with staff and teams. So the question here is, what processes do we need to follow to determine the information as a business owner you share either with your staff or your team members?
Okay, so at what level you're sharing that information?
At level, yeah.
Okay.
At what level, yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's one for each of you as well. Perhaps, Dave, would you like to go first on this one?
Yeah, I guess that to a certain extent depends on the size of your business. I mean, we're not a big business. We share virtually everything with everybody. You know, we don't hide anything. We're very honest with each other, you know, about the good stuff and the bad stuff. I guess that's a bit more difficult if you're a much bigger business. So I think if you have a senior leadership team in a business, say, you know, with 100 people or 200 people or whatever you, it's about what is it that they need to know. You might want to communicate everything, and they might need to know everything. But what are the key messages that we need to get out there? Because if you don't, you can communicate the what, but sometimes you have to communicate the why. Because the why gives people context, it gives them motivation to get involved. And I think what I see with businesses, they do a lot of communicating of the what, but they don't give the context. They don't explain the why. So my tip would be explain the why. Give people context, allow them to get motivated and get behind what you're doing. That's generally where I think people go wrong. The level to which you communicate minute detail, I guess you have to judge that business by business, I think.
And Ian, what would you have to say on that?
So this is just my personal view, as opposed to kind of textbook answers. So we have junior members of the team. They're only interested in the next 3 years. They're all trainees and they'll be gone. So sharing them with my vision of the world for the next is pointless. And a lot of the information they're not interested in. So they get a little bit, they get the bit they need that I think matters to them. But if we've got future sort of boss members, so this is the kind of strategic handing over the ownership to really senior people in my team, they need everything and they do want to know what my plans are for the next 10 years. And I've tailored it that way, whereas I just did a blanket, everyone have everything, and it sort of didn't work. That's just my experience.
That's interesting. Thank you, Ian. And Robert, did you have anything to say on that?
The question was about the art of delegation and sharing of information. And I think at the moment, what a lot of staff members would want to know is, in this uncertain time, are their roles safe? You know, if they've been furloughed, are they going to come back to work? And I think it's going to be quite short term. So I think it's a case of organisations and leaders need to be open and honest and try and explain, well, look, this is what Dave said, is that the vision of the company is this over the long, and Ian did, over the long term is this. We still believe in that vision, we're still trying to create it, but we need to know now, from an information point of view, you need to know that the cash in the business, we're okay for the next 6 months. And then as a result of that, we hopefully will be able to move forward. And it's just, I think, just being open and honest with people at the moment.
Okay.
Lovely, thank you.
Does that help, Bea?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Lovely. Can we go to Gordon, please? Oh, no, sorry,
It's Paul.
Sorry, I do apologise, Paul. And your question, please?
Thanks. Yes, the context for our question really was that the feeling in the room that certainly for SMEs, it's people who drive growth. So on the subject of growing and taking people with you, we also have to consider what happens when we're taking on new people. And that tends often to be on an incremental basis. You've established, you may have the same team for 2 or 3 years and then you add to it. Mm-hmm. And that's quite a hazardous, all employment is hazardous, but that is a particularly hazardous moment. So what are the most important qualities we should be looking for in people when we're recruiting them?
Okay, I think that probably comes back to the culture and your vision, but perhaps that can go over to Dave, please.
Yeah, well, if you follow the sort of mantra that Traction talks about, they say once you've got your values and you understand your values, you hire, fire, reward, and recognize it against them. So you want to bring people into your business that share your values first and foremost. Obviously, there's other things like, they got the skill sets, the knowledge sets, etc., that you want. To a certain extent, if they're the right people, the right caliber person, then you can teach them some of that stuff. I'd rather have a person with the right values who needs a bit of training than somebody who's got a lot of skills and knowledge but just doesn't fit the business, because they're going to be much harder work to manage and work with. So I would start with the values. Get people in your business, especially now, that fit what you're trying to do. And if you don't have that values thing done, then that's maybe a bit of work that needs to be done.
Very good point.
We brought in Rich, my business partner. We brought his daughter in to be our executive assistant about 18 months ago, and she's been absolutely brilliant. Now, her last employer said they got rid of her. They said she wasn't really doing the job. They didn't look after her properly. That was the bottom line. She is fantastic, and she hits so many of our values in terms of how she behaves. And I'm not just saying it because it's his daughter. I would say it anyway. She is fantastic, and it's been a real joy to see her sort of start to thrive again in the business. But because she fits our value set, that's what's important.
So it's definitely the right person in the right
person first.
Right,
look at the capability as a sort of second thing. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's really good. Was that helpful, Paul?
Certainly, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, to John, may I have your question, please?
It wasn't really a question. It was more, I'm afraid, an observation on the title of the webinar.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, we questioned, or we had a really interesting discussion talking about a number of things, but we questioned whether we should be driving growth, and actually what we should be doing is driving value of the business. We've got a client, for instance, we've been working with for a few years. We're distributors for 2 American companies, but we never felt we were going to get rich being distributors. So we've been developing our own intellectual property. We could have grown a lot faster just by concentrating on the distribution model, but we believe the value is a hell of a lot higher doing what we're doing.
Yes, I think that's very interesting. Dave, did you want to comment on that at all?
No, it is a good observation. It's quite a good challenge as well. And I think I wouldn't necessarily separate the two. So I've looked at what we've been doing since we implemented Traction into the EOS model into our business. Yes, we have grown in terms of our turnover has increased and our profitability has got better. But actually, we've also done a lot of work about how are we adding value. Yeah, and we have obviously, we've changed some of our IP. We've now got to move to our business model's got to change, because we were going to be asked to do a lot more of what we do online, which wasn't how our model was set up 3 years ago. So how do we carry on adding value? That's a really important question when you're growing a business. It's not just about numbers. It's about, because our mantra is we want to help organizations grow using connected leadership, so that communities can thrive and prosper. So that communities to thrive and prosper bit is really important. So what are we doing for the community to help them and add value? So in this lockdown period, we've done quite a lot of workshops on resilience for our clients for free, because that adds value to them in a time when they're really struggling. And that's the right thing to do. It was a decision we made that was the right thing to do. Yeah. And I think you've got to think about that. How do we add value? You've got to ask that question all the time.
Perfect. I think that's a really lovely point to end on, and I think that's something we can all take away from this. So thank you everyone for all your questions and comments, and also to our wonderful panel for giving us such wise advice. Now, as some of you know, each week we like to share Sophie's thoughts on various things. So James, if I may ask you to share Sophie's thought for the week. And this is a Chinese proverb, which is quite thought-provoking. And James will find it in a minute, I'm hoping. Okay, not to worry. Basically, the Chinese proverb says, not the cry, but the flight of a wild duck leads the flock to fly and follow. So it's a bit of a tongue twister, and I've been very worried about making some mistakes on that, but I think it's a really interesting point to think about. It's not the cry, but the flight. So we have to take that action, and then that will lead the flock to follow. We also then have Sofie's book of the week, which is Humble Leadership, the Power of Relationships, Openness and Trust. And I think that leads really well into what we've discussed as well, the fact that how much we share, trusting and building relationships within the business. And that's by Edgar and Peter Shine. And it really explains why real leaders are not arrogant command givers, but astute listeners. And finally, we come to a little brain teaser of the week. And a fabulous box of Hotel Chocolat chocolates go to the first person on the chat bar who can tell me who are these chaps. So who are the two chaps in the first photo and who is the chap in the second photo? John Panzak has got part of it, but he hasn't got the second person. So we'll leave that with you. See if you can work out who the third person is. Coming up next week, we have a really fascinating webinar on managing redundancies. And obviously that has been touched on a little bit when we've been talking about how you get the right team together. But it's also about maintaining trust with the people who are left behind. So that's going to be fascinating. And again, sort of leading on from that, on the 24th of June, we've got a fantastic webinar on mental well-being in a COVID-stricken world. And that is not just for you, but also for your staff. So two really relevant and we hope very useful webinars to come.
Nikki?
Yes.
Could I just jump in with a small technical thing that people might find helpful?
Yes,
so we've all been encouraged to put our details in the chat box. Absolutely. So we can keep in touch with each other.
Yeah.
I don't know if people are aware, if you hover in the bottom right hand corner of the chat box, you get the option to save chat. So you can actually, you can download a file with everybody's details in it.
That's really useful. Thank you, Dave. And
Gordon,
finally,
thank you, Gordon.
Oh, sorry, Gordon. I do apologise.
That's all right.
I got something covering your face. I don't think it's personal, so please don't take it as that.
That's fine.
And over to James for our man of the moment. I feel I should have chosen the man of the moment, James.
The man of the moment. So this is a rather young-looking Bernard Greville Jones, who is an education entrepreneur, and he certainly inspired me in the last 48 hours. So Sophie's man of the moment is Bernard Greville Jones. Do come to the Whitney Business Breakfast next Thursday, the 18th of June, and be inspired by Bernard's vision.
Fantastic.
So all that it remains for me to do is to say, be bold and be enterprising.
And for me to say, be connected. Thank you all for joining us today. A big thank you to our panel of experts. We hope you've enjoyed it and we hope to see you next week.